I had an outstanding time going on a trip with my friend to Los Angeles to get a Shelby GT350. This is a little bit of the trip down the highway near Las Vegas, south of Vegas towards California. And it was just so much fun to go on this trip. I love going to pick up a car. It's one of my favorite things to do. And my friend had been looking for GT350s for a long time. We had been doing this together and he had been making a lot of plans and trips to go, and I was really excited to help him bring the car back, and he wanted me to drive the Shelby back, especially since this one had Recaro seats. This was the first time we saw the car, which is always fun to see the car for the first time. It was at this little body shop and it was getting some work done to it. The quarter panel needed to be repainted, and this passenger side fender had been replaced from an accident. The stripes you can see on the nose needed to be replaced, and they had them in the trunk in the OEM Ford packaging. And what we didn't know was that the car didn't have the bumper or the taillights in it yet. They were still working on it a little bit. But looking underneath the car, you can see that the car has the differential cooler right here, and that means that this is a track pack car, which is really good for a 2016, because only the 2016 Shelby GT350s with the track pack came with the differential cooler and the trans cooler, and that's actually the reason why I turned down a competition orange 2016 Shelby GT350 with 7,000 miles on it that I almost bought, because I was afraid that people who would want the car later would not want to buy it because of that issue. And so that was the first thing my friend asked me when I talked about Shelbys with him, especially the 350s. I said, well, make sure to get the track pack car, because the tech package car didn't have that in 2016. 2017, they all came with them. Now the car is missing the lower valence pieces, and that's something he's going to get later. But anyway, this is how the car sounded. It sounded great. So this is Shelby chassis number 3530 for the GT350. Really nice car, only 6,000 miles. Beautiful car inside and out. It has a Watson roll bar from the previous owner. But other than that, the entire car is stock. And it has the rear seat delete back there too. And that was really fun, actually, driving the car and then looking back behind you and seeing the roll bar. It's actually kind of fun to drive it that way. So he's not sure if he's going to keep that roll bar or not. But other than that, everything checked out perfectly. The engine was very smooth. You could hear it in the earlier clip. That's just injector noise. It's standard on these cars. That's the way they sound. And the firing order on this flat plane crank, maybe you can hear that if you have a good ear for it, but that's just what the car sounds like. Beautiful car with only 6,000 miles on it. We checked the oil because we know that these consume oil sometimes. And it did turn out that this car was down about a quart of oil. It was just at the bottom of the dipstick, still in the safe area on the very bottom of the hash marks, but these cars take 10 quarts of oil. We decided to go ahead and go to the dealership and get some more oil. So here's a new GT500, beautiful car sitting in the showroom. And we went there to go get 2 quarts of oil just to have plenty on hand, and it's the full synthetic 5W50, so we can't get it just anywhere. We tried AutoZone, but they didn't have it. So we went here to the Ford of Montebello near Commerce, California, and this was a really cool dealership. I liked it a lot because it had a lot of Mustang stuff on the walls, like this Shelby GT500 poster, and it had even more. I didn't want to go around taking pictures of everything in front of everybody, but I did snap a shot of that poster. So the seller did buy the oil. He had a discount because he's a dealer. And my friend could have got a discount too because he was a Ford employee for 30 years. Really awesome guy. I really like hanging out with him. He teaches me a lot. And so anyway, the oil was $10 a quart on the discount, so times 10 quarts, it's $100 plus the filter, so no wonder these oil changes are so expensive. I've talked to people before about it and I didn't know that's why. But anyway, we just bought a couple quarts because the car did have perfect records from Carfax and it had its oil change 2,000 miles ago, and it does look like it ate a quart in that time. And here's the new Bronco leaving the dealership. There were some coyotes on the other side that I liked to look at that were cool too. Anyway, we got back and we added the full synthetic 550. We started with half a quart and it was still reading a little bit low, and so we added the full quart and that seemed to do just right. But anyway, that is something I've heard. Some GT350 owners say that their cars consume oil, and Ford had put out a statement that they're high revving engines and they will consume oil and that's normal. And so it just really depends. We don't know the real reason, but this car only has 6,000 miles on it. So it was clean looking oil anyway, and the Carfax showed perfect records from the dealership, and it did show a recent oil change. So we just added that just to be safe because we didn't want to test drive the car. Even though we weren't going to hot rod it around too much or take it up to 8,000 RPM, we wanted to make sure that it had the right amount of oil in it so that we could drive it around and feel comfortable about it. And the car ran phenomenal. This Shelby passed emissions, it passed everything. It did have a check engine light that came up after the emissions test, and it was just the code PO442, which is a small leak in the EVAP system. My GT has that too, it's no big deal. Something cool is with the bumper off, you can see the active exhaust solenoid. And so if you look up here, this solenoid has a butterfly valve that it opens and shuts on this secondary exhaust tip. So that's something really cool to be able to see on this car. So we decided to put the tail lights in. I put the one in on the passenger side, and they got the one on the driver's side in. And my friend wanted me to drive it first, and I said, yeah, that's fine, we'll take it for a test drive. And we zip tied the license plate to the bumper support on the inside, and we took it for a little test drive, and I really enjoyed it. So I had driven it first, and then he took it for a ride and said, hey, when I'm test driving it, go in there in the body shop and check out the bumper. It's in there and it looks just fine, looks absolutely beautiful. So I went in to check it out, and everything looked good on it, and this shop was doing good work on what they were doing. And there was a Corvette I saw him doing a lot of work on too. That looked pretty cool to see them fixing it up. And I noticed that there was a Coyote Mustang in there with track pack wheels on it. And I was like, wow, look at this thing, you know. I couldn't believe how messed up it was. And it had an Instagram sticker for Rojo's exhaust on there. And I thought, I'm going to look this car up when I get home and see what I can find. But look at this 6-speed car, and it's just totally filthy. And, you know, I did trust their work, though. I thought they're going to make this thing look beautiful once they're done with it, that's for sure. And so I looked, and I did see the Coyote in there, but this is the car. So here you can see a white Coyote fascia with fog lights in it, ready to go on that car. It's behind it. They're getting ready to fix it up. I couldn't believe that this car was like this. It's real sad after seeing it on Instagram. But anyway, we were looking at the Shelby again, and it had a couple of cracks and scratches in the paint, which unfortunately happened after they repainted this car. And it looked really good, the paint work and everything, so it's real sad that it had that. But going under the car, this is where the majority of the damage for the car was. It's not really visible, but you can see this denting here in the body. That's where the issue for the car comes in for the damage history on the car. But nothing really major. The rest of the car was absolutely perfect. But my friend had to make a choice because this was the other Shelby that we were going to go see that same day. It was about 40 minutes away, Avalanche Gray, one owner car. The original owner had bought this car brand new, changed the oil on it twice every 6 months. He was very meticulous with it. Striped Elite car, beautiful car inside and out. Recaro seats as well. It had 21,000 miles on it, and he was asking just a little bit more than the gray one. And we were going to go get this car and check it out and drive it. And the owner said the only thing he didn't like about it was how the body panels don't fit completely right. And that's just something that these all suffer from. Now, I liked this car a lot. I thought it was super clean, and it was a little bit more money, but I was also wanting to be able to drive one of the cars home today, and seeing the other car with the bumper off, I just wasn't sure if that was going to happen. But talking with my friend, he had to make the decision, and so we negotiated a lot with the salesman. Now, I was able to speak a lot of Spanish with the salesman because I had lived in Paraguay for 2 years. I learned Spanish, and it was fun to be able to negotiate and talk back and forth. I didn't want to get into the middle of their conversation, but we did talk price, and the salesman was really good. He was really nice and easy to work with, and we just talked back and forth, and we just came to a conclusion that this other one, for not so much more, would be a better deal, so he needs to work on the price a little bit with us. So there was a lot to consider for my friend. This magnetic gray car only had 6,000 miles on it, and besides the damage and repair, it was a much lower mile car, same year, a lot of things to consider, but ultimately the biggest thing was, what car does my friend want the most? And the answer to that was magnetic gray. He wanted this car. And even looking at other ones for sale, they were a lot more expensive around the country, and he liked ruby red and this color the most, and this was just what he wanted. He said he just couldn't live with the Avalanche Gray. He just knows he wouldn't love it. So we went to the bank. We had to do a lot to get the money. You know, he had the money in the account, but we had to do a whole bunch of things since we were in California now. And a funny story is, he pulled out all this money and they counted it and it was short. And we looked back in the envelope and there was $400 extra in the envelope that he had accidentally not pulled out. He didn't know it was in there. He didn't see it. And it was so funny. And so in Spanish to the other salespeople there, I was laughing and saying, "Mentiroso, trucho, he's a liar, he's a cheat, he's trying to get you." And they all laughed because they knew he was an honest guy, and they watched him pull the money out of the bank. They watched them put it in the counting machine. So he wasn't trying to hide the envelope anywhere else. It was sitting there on the desk. So it was pretty funny. It was just something we all laughed at. So luckily, that was there. So we had to kill some time. They said they'd put the bumper back on, get the car ready for us to take, and we could take it that day. So we got some really good Mexican food that they suggested, a nice restaurant nearby. And we came across this place. Look at all these minis. I'd never seen so many minis in my life. They must deal with them. A lot of them were damaged. They had missing headlights and weird things broken on them. But I've heard that they're a real pain to fix. So those might all be parts cars that they're using for making a couple good ones. But anyway, we went back over and checked on the car. It was doing really well. They had the bumper almost all the way on, but it was taking a little while. You know, we wanted to drive back, and that was going to be a drive all the way there and back. At least was 10 hours not minding traffic. So finally they got it all cleaned up. They got the stripe on it, and it looked great. It was a lot better looking with all the parts back on it. And the car was very, very nice. I was really excited to be able to drive this back from California back to Utah, and it was just a fun experience. The sun was starting to go down and we were ready to go. And this car sounded amazing and it drove perfect. So as you can see, there was a ton of traffic. I told them this is what it was like when I got my red Terminator and brought it back. And so we knew it was going to be like this, and even on a Friday night it was even worse. And we even saw two coyotes on the side of the road that looked like they probably ran out of gas because it was just stop and go. We did notice that one of the tire pressure sensors was bad in the front right wheel. The pressure was just fine, but the sensor inside must be bad or something. so it was giving us the light. It literally took us hours to get out of California, like 2 hours to get through the freeway system and everything. It was stop and go and stop and go. I used every gear from first, second, and third like 100 times. I kept getting through first, second, third, back down to second, back down to first, back to a standstill, back in first, second, third, and then back into neutral and back. So I really got a good workout with that clutch. And the hydraulic clutch in this car is really nice compared to all the cable-driven clutches I've had in the past. Obviously, this hydraulic clutch was really smooth, but it was also starting to get a little bit hot. I could tell. I could smell a little bit. I wasn't dragging it out or anything, but I could tell that it was a lot of wear and tear on the car, which I know it's made for it and it's not going to have any problems from that. But it just was a lot of gear changes, and the Recaro seats were really getting uncomfortable after a couple hours of stop and go traffic and using the clutch. The farthest part forward on the bottom of the seat, where the bottom of your legs are by your knees, started to hurt pretty bad, and kind of move and sit on one side of my butt and then back on the other side. And you know, when I was actually moving, I could put the car in cruise control and just kind of move around a little bit in the seat. So they were not the most comfortable seats, and I know the racing seats are not supposed to be comfortable, but that was just something that I didn't think would be as annoying, and I don't complain about things like that very often, so that just tells you that those are not really fun seats to travel far distances in. But when I got my Terminator out of California, it was the same thing. It was just stop and go all the way back. It took us like 8 or 9 hours to get back. It's like almost double the time it took to get there. And anyway, but here we are in Barstow at the, if you're leaving, you know, headed back northbound, this is the first exit in Barstow. There's an In-N-Out right across the street where we went to eat, and it was really nice there. That's where I stopped with my red Terminator when I brought it back as well. And we just got gas here and filled it up. That was another thing to consider, was the gas. When we left Commerce, which is where we were getting the car, I told him that we better fill the car up, and the gas prices there are obviously a lot more expensive than they are in Barstow, so he didn't want to put a whole lot of gas in it. But he did, you know, he put like 7 gallons in it or something, and as I was going, I was using all the really neat new computer controls on the steering wheel. And so I thought it was really cool. I could cycle through and see cylinder head temperature, oil temperature, you know, all the different things that it reads, and transmission temperature, differential temperature, but it also had miles till empty. You know, I would be on that one, and when we were going in the stop and go traffic, it'd be like 100 miles till empty, but we had like 130 miles to get to Barstow, and there wasn't really anywhere good to pull off to get gas in any of the other areas like Victorville. And that's only because it was just so hard to get off the freeway and then get back on with all the traffic. But as I got it in 6th gear and started cruising, the distance till empty didn't drop as much as I started eating up miles at higher speed with more efficiency, and it got to the point where that came down to the point where Barstow was only like 60 miles away and I had 80 miles till empty. So I was trusting the computer, but I was also realizing that with more efficiency I was going to be able to make it there, and that's where we wanted to go. And you know, it was kind of hard because he'd be behind me and I didn't want to lose him, especially with all the different freeway interchanges, and I'd let him get ahead of me, but then it was hard to be behind him too because cars would cut in front of us, and just traveling in a group can be difficult sometimes. I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, it was a lot of fun, and something that I really enjoyed, or the point that I really enjoyed the whole trip, was obviously getting to drive the car and getting to drive it back. I was happy that we were able to purchase the car and take it home that same day. And this car probably has Bluetooth or something on the stereo system. It's not the Tech Pack car, but a new car is real difficult to play around with the radio when you're driving and everything. But I did bring my USB adapter that had a Bluetooth adapter on it, so I was able to get Bluetooth on my phone. And I really enjoyed cruising with my music. in the stop and go, it was still fun because it was low speed. I had the windows down and I was just enjoying a brand new car. And so I had a lot of fun with that, even though I wanted to get going. I just tried to look at it like I was going for a nice drive at night, and it was going to be a several-hour drive, and I enjoyed all of it. Of course, you're always wanting to get home, but it was a fun drive. And so we finally made it here to Las Vegas. This is just getting into Vegas, and I had a lot of fun there because that's always a point where you know you're getting closer to home, for me at least, because I'm 2 hours north of Vegas. And so we had to stop and get gas again just to make sure that everything was safe for the drive home. So we stopped and we got gas at the same gas station that I'd been to before. But finally, we got the car home and we got it in the garage next to his Terminator. And now he is just totally enjoying the car. We test drove a lot of cars together. I test drove the Roush RS3, a GT500 with a Whipple, this GT350, and there were a lot of cars he was looking at, and I think he made a really good choice with this car. It is a very, very, very nice car. The miles are low. It drives perfect. You would never know that it ever had any accident history or anything like that, and I'm very happy for him because it is so nice. And so he drove it the next day and he said, "Boy, I didn't really get to drive the car very much. You're the one who drove it 400 miles home." And I'm really, really pleased with this car. Yeah, you know, because he'd call me while we were driving and we'd talk a little bit. You know, I had hands free. We were able to talk while we were driving, and he's just like, "What's it like? What's it like?" And I said, "It's phenomenal. This car is really nice." I told him I'm in love. I really love this car. When we stopped and ate it in and out, he's like, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "I'm in love with this car." I mean, of course, I am New Edge Mustang enthusiast and I love my Terminators. I'm not going to sell my Terminators to get one of these, but maybe later down the road I'll pick up one of these. You know, it's a really neat car. I think it's neat that it's a hand-built engine. It's a very special flat plane crank 8250 RPM car. There's a lot of really neat things about this car that are special and unique, just like the Mach 1s and the Terminators, stuff like that that I'm really into. So having a 6-speed instead of the new GT500 with an automatic, to me, is really important. I know the new automatic 7-speed dual clutch is a really awesome car. And speaking of the 6-speed, this car has the Tremec in it. Unlike the Coyote cars with the Chinese MT82, that was a big factor for me. That was the first thing I told them of why I like this car. And I did tell him the new Mach 1 comes with a Tremec as well. That's a really neat thing. It's the Coyote with a Tremec, so that's a possibility, but this car was really cool. But for me, the driving experience needs a manual transmission. So to me, I think I'd rather have one of these than the new GT500. And I know people put Whipples on these and they put down the same power as the new GT500. And I mean, if power is the reason you don't want one of these, you know, there are alternatives for that. We also did a ton of research when we bought this car. We were looking into the different years, and they did make a Gen 2 Voodoo in 2019 and later had all the stuff that the GT500 has, and I actually had that in a video I made about the difference between the engine of the 5.2 in the GT350 and the GT500. And when I had made that video, I had talked about how all the changes for the new Predator engine would be carried over to the GT350, such as longer head bolts, more material around the pistons and cooling jackets, timing components. You know, the 19 and newer GT350s have the same valve train as the GT350R. And it's also been said that the 19 and newer can take 12 pounds of boost safely, and that's probably to do with the oil pump gears and oil pump and all that stuff. So there are a lot of differences with the 19 and newer that I had researched, and I had a lot of that in the video I made. So there's a lot of really cool things that we learned. This car being a 2016, it doesn't have all that, but it's still a very neat car, a very safe car. For the power level it's at, and you can really wind this thing out. So just a really cool car. I think he's gonna really enjoy it, and we're gonna be doing a lot with this. He told me, "You're gonna be driving this car a lot, so I hope you like it. And I said, I do. I think you made an excellent choice. So that was really fun. I always love to go get a car. So that's the story of getting this GT350. I hope you enjoyed it. As you can see, there was a lot to it, more than just going down, picking up a car and driving home. There was a lot to it. And this car is a very, very nice car. It drove like a brand new car. It smells like a brand new car. It was really fun and a great experience. So I hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Mustang content.